Hey everyone, and welcome. We're kicking off our Class 11 biology journey with the absolute foundation of it all, the living world. This chapter asks some really big questions, and honestly, it sets the stage for everything else you're going to learn. So let's get right into it. Really think about it for a second. What exactly makes something living? It seems so simple, right? A horse is alive, a rock isn't. But where do you draw that line? And what about those super tricky cases, like a virus? It seems to be in this weird gray area. To really get biology, we need a solid answer to this. So let's find one. So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll nail down what living truly means. Then, we'll see how scientists organize the millions of life forms out there. We'll walk through the hierarchy of classification, check out the tools they use, and wrap up with some exam questions and a quick revision to make sure you've got it locked in. All right, first up, and this is a big one. We're going to figure out the difference between just a characteristic of life and a true, non-negotiable, defining feature. Getting this distinction right is absolutely crucial, especially when it comes to your exams. When you ask someone what makes something alive, you usually get these 5 answers: growth, reproduction, metabolism, cellular organization, and consciousness. But here's the million-dollar question. Are they all foolproof? Are they all unique to living things? Let's put each one to the test. Let's start with 2 that seem obvious: growth and reproduction. But are they really defining features? Well, think about growth. A tree grows from the inside out, right? That's called intrinsic growth. But a mountain can also grow as sand and rock pile up on its surface. That's extrinsic. Since a non-living thing can grow, it's not a defining feature. Okay, what about reproduction? Well, sure, it's essential for a species to continue. But what about individuals? You've got mules, sterile worker bees, even some humans who are definitely alive but can't reproduce. Because we have these exceptions, reproduction is out too. It's just a characteristic, not a defining feature. Okay, so if growth and reproduction are off the table, what's left? What are the real, non-negotiable, 100% defining features of life? There are 3. First, you've got metabolism. That's the sum of all the chemical reactions happening inside an organism to keep it alive. A rock doesn't have a metabolism, right? So that's a check. Second, cellular organization. Everything that's alive is made of 1 or more cells, period. No exceptions. Another big check. And finally, consciousness. The ability to sense what's going on around you and react to it. These 3, metabolism, cellular organization, and consciousness, are the gold standard. You will definitely see this on your exams, so burn these into your memory. All right, so we figured out what life is, but now, how on earth do we make sense of the millions and millions of different living things out there? That brings us to our next challenge, trying to organize this huge, grand library of life. Just look at this number. The scale of life is just mind-boggling. We're talking 1.7 to 1.8 million known and described species. And get this, we're still finding new ones all the time. This incredible variety is what we call biodiversity. Now, imagine trying to find a specific book and a library with millions of books, but no categories, no index, no system at all. It'd be total chaos, right? So to fix this messy library problem, in comes our hero, a biologist named Carolus Linnaeus. He came up with this absolutely genius system called binomial nomenclature. Bi for 2, nomen for name. It's a 2-part naming system. Every organism gets a universal scientific name with 2 parts, the genus and the specific epithet. Take the mango, for example, Mangifera indica. Now, a scientist anywhere in the world knows exactly what you're talking about, no confusion. Now, for this system to work, everyone has to follow the same rules, and these are super important for your exams, so listen up. Rule 1, the names are always in Latin and typed in italics. Rule 2, the first word, the genus, starts with a capital letter. Rule 3, the second word, the specific epithet, starts with a lowercase letter. And Rule 4, if you're writing it by hand, you have to underline each word separately. Don't connect the lines. Sometimes you'll even see the name of the scientist who first described it at the end, like Lin for Linnaeus. Okay, let's clear up 2 words that sound similar but mean different things: taxonomy and systematics. Taxonomy is basically the how-to guide for classification. It's the process. You characterize, identify, classify, and name things. It's like sorting the books in our library by genre: fiction, nonfiction, sci-fi. Systematics is the whole library, including its history. It takes everything from taxonomy and adds one crucial thing: the evolutionary relationships between organisms. It's not just about what shelf the book is on, but also how that book relates to all the other books written over time. It's the family tree of life. So how is this grand library of life actually organized? It's not just one giant pile, it's a hierarchy, kind of like a set of Russian dolls, where each group fits neatly inside a bigger, more general one. This structure has a name, the taxonomic hierarchy. And here it is, the taxonomic hierarchy, from the biggest, most inclusive group at the top, all the way down to the most specific at the bottom. It goes kingdom, phylum, or division, if we're talking about plants, then class, order, family, genus, and species. Now, to remember this exact sequence, you have to know this mnemonic. Keep pots clean or family get sick. Seriously, write that down. It will save you in an exam. This table is directly from your NCERT textbook, which means it's extremely important. Let's trace humans, for example. Our species is sapiens in the genus Homo. Related genera are grouped into the family Hominidae, which is in the order Primata, in the class Mammalia, and finally in the phylum Chordata. And here's the big idea you need to grasp. As you go up the ladder from species to kingdom, the groups get bigger, and the members have less and less in common with each other. Okay, so we've got the theory down. We understand the structure of classification. But how do biologists actually do this stuff in the real world? Well, they have a set of practical tools and resources, and we call them taxonomical aids. Let's open up the toolkit. First up, we have the Herbarium, and really it's like a library for plants, but instead of books on shelves, you have these sheets with dried, pressed plant specimens. And the label on each sheet is everything. It tells you the date and place of collection, its scientific and local names, its family, who collected it, all the critical data for future reference. But the toolkit doesn't stop there. You've got botanical gardens, which are basically living libraries of plants from all over the world. Then there are museums. These are for preserved specimens. Think skeletons, animals in jars, or insects pinned in boxes. And of course, we have zoological parks, or zoos, where we can study living wild animals and their behavior up close in protected environments. Okay, so let's say you're out in the field and you find some organism you've never seen before. How do you figure out what it is? You use a tool called a taxonomic key. It's basically a choose-your-own-adventure for identification. It works by giving you a pair of contrasting statements, and this pair is called a couplet. For instance, the first choice might be, does the organism have a vertebral column? So, let's say you chose yes for the vertebral column. The key then directs you to the next couplet, which might ask, does the organism have external ears and body hair? If you say yes to that, congratulations, you've just narrowed it down to the class Mammalia. See how that works? Each one of those statements in the pair is called a lead. You just follow the leads, one after the other, and boom, you can identify your organism. Whew, okay, that was a lot, but now it's time to make sure it all sunk in. Let's shift gears and test your knowledge with a classic NCERT question, and then do a lightning-fast revision of the whole chapter. All right, here's your question straight from the book. Why do we even classify living organisms? Take a second, pause if you need to, and think about it. Okay, you got your answer? Basically, there are three big reasons. One, it just makes studying the millions of organisms way easier and more organized. Two, it helps us understand how different groups are related to each other on the evolutionary tree. And three, it provides the foundation for pretty much every other field of biology. Okay, lightning round. Let's nail down the absolute must-knows from this chapter. The three defining features of life: metabolism, cellular organization, consciousness. The hierarchy: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The naming system: binomial nomenclature, from Carolus Linnaeus. And the taxonomist toolkit: herbaria, museums, botanical gardens, zoos, and keys. That's the chapter in a nutshell. So remember, this chapter isn't just about memorizing a bunch of terms. Really understanding how we define and organize the living world, that's the key that unlocks the rest of biology. And I'll leave you with one last thing to chew on. We talked about Linnaeus' system, but science is always moving forward. With amazing new tools like DNA sequencing, we're seeing the family tree of life in a whole new light. So how do you think our grand library of life might get reorganized in the future? It's a pretty cool thing to think about. Thanks for tuning in, and never stop exploring.